If you're hearing this message before March 23rd, that means our giveaway is still open. We're giving away a $75 Visa gift card to one lucky listener who completes our quick 2-minute podcast survey. This annual podcast survey helps us to continue to improve the show. It's easy, fast, and your input is super valuable. The deadline to enter is March 23rd at 12 a.m. Hawaii time. So to enter, simply scroll down to the episode description and click the survey link below. Or go to hawaiisbesttravel.com/survey. Thanks for listening and enjoy today's episode. In this episode, you'll discover the untold story of Waikiki, how a lush paradise once central to Hawaiian culture became the iconic destination that it is today, and the surprising truths that every visitor should know before their trip. Aloha and welcome to Hawaii's Best, the podcast that helps you discover the best of Hawaii. Here, you'll get travel tips, the latest news, and everything you need to plan an unforgettable trip to Hawaii. Aloha, my name is Brian Murphy, your guide to Hawaii. And in this episode, you'll discover the untold story of Waikiki, what was once a sacred wetland that cared for over 100,000 Hawaiians, how this royal residence became the second settlement of all Hawaiians in history, and what most visitors miss about its true cultural legacy. Welcome to episode 139 of Hawaii's Best. On the show, we love learning from local businesses and voices and having guests on the podcast and helping us travel with Aloha to Hawaii. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome back Kamaka Pili, a Native Hawaiian cultural practitioner and creator of Aloha Authentic. If you haven't listened to my conversation with Kamaka, part 1 was last Wednesday. You can go ahead and listen to that. You don't need to necessarily listen to that prior to today's episode. Both of the episodes stand alone, and that's kind of why I did a part 1 and part 2. In part 1, we discussed a lot about the word aloha, what it means to travel with aloha. So after today's episode, you can just go back to episode 137, I believe. That will be the episode with Kamaka. You'll be able to learn more about what it means to travel with aloha and a little bit more about Kamaka. But today we are talking primarily about Waikiki, and most visitors to Waikiki only see the hotels, shops, and beaches. Many aren't aware of Waikiki's past. I learned a ton from my time with Kamaka about Waikiki and the fight to create a more authentic experience for Hawaiians and visitors to Waikiki. Now, don't get me wrong, Waikiki, there's some incredible spots. You know, you got that iconic Diamond Head backdrop. You know, if you're at Duke's or staying at the Royal Hawaiian, there's still so much history in Waikiki. But in today's episode, we're going to dig down a few layers deep about what Waikiki was in the past. And by the end of today's episode, you'll learn why this history matters and how these stories can make your time in Hawaii even more meaningful. So let's continue to talk story with Kamaka.
Let's talk story.
Waikiki being, I guess, probably the mecca, if you will, of tourism in Hawaii. And maybe you talked about nothing tall as a coconut tree, but maybe you could, if you're able to just go beyond that a little bit and share about Waikiki's past and kind of paint us a picture of what Waikiki was.
Oh, I would love to. Thank you for that opportunity, because as a Native Hawaiian, and I think it's safe to say that I can speak on many Native Hawaiians, not all, but we don't like to go into Waikiki. And growing up, I never wanted to go. The only time I would ever go into Waikiki is when we would have dawn patrol, and you go early in the morning when it's still dark to go jump in the water and surf before all the people come out and crowd the water. Other than that, we never wanted to. And then as I got into becoming a young adult and I got my first jobs, I remember doing a gig and I was walking down on the sidewalk from a hotel down to the Duke Kahanamoku statue because it was a ceremony honoring him. Well, I'm just in my malo or my loincloth and walking down the side of the sidewalk, and people are just turning and staring at me and making weird looking faces. And I just felt it's like, you're trying to make me feel uncomfortable in my own home wearing traditional attire that my ancestors wore. I don't accept that. And it just made me feel like, okay, even more so, I don't like Waikiki. But as much as I don't like Waikiki, it feels like It just became a responsibility. As much as I didn't like it, I have to do something to fix that, at least for myself. Over time, I met this uncle who had since passed, but his name is Joe Recca, and he was a Waikiki historian. And he was the one who really just, and with the short amount of time that I spent with him, opened up this whole other side of Waikiki that was completely out of my awareness. If you start looking into history books, just imagine how Waikiki is today. Take everything away. Take everything away and just think it's a big old wetland. And from the shore all the way up into the back of the mountains is just what we call lo'ikalo, or taro patches. And taro, or what we call kalo, is our main staple starch in Hawaii. We actually, in Hawaiian stories, consider that to be our older brother. It was just filled. And then aside from that, then you had fish ponds. And all of that today, majority of that today, has been filled in. So a lot of the things that you see today of Waikiki is the landscape itself is completely different. I mean, if we just look at the name Waikiki, and that's an important thing in Hawaiian culture, are our names. So if you look at Waikiki, W-A-I is freshwater. And kiki is the action of spouting, like a spring. So Waikiki literally means the spouting springs, because all throughout the shoreline and up into, which is now all covered by cement, they're all freshwater springs. And that's what provided the wetlands and sourced the wetlands, aside from streams that flow down from the mountain. Well, imagine which no longer is there, but there were 3 prominent streams that flowed into Waikiki. For visitors who may have stayed at some hotels, the Ilikai Hotel, which is on one side of Waikiki, that was the mouth of one of these streams, and I think it was the largest one. It was called Pi'inaio, and it provided a lot of water to a lot of the fish ponds that remained on that side. In the middle of Waikiki, kind of near Royal Hawaiian Hotel, was a stream called Apuakehau, and it literally split Waikiki into 2 different sections. Then the third stream closest to Honolulu Zoo today was a stream known as Kuekaunahi. And that actually provided, for those who may be familiar with Honolulu Zoo, that whole area, the parking lot, that was all wetlands. There was actually small little islands within that area. And there was one of the largest islands was known as Maki Island, named after a gentleman. Just thinking of that, growing up, we would have never imagined that, because you can't imagine water in Waikiki because it's all filled in now. Then I'm coming across stories that the amount of kalo that was grown in Waikiki, at one point in history, story shares that it was able to provide up to 100,000 Hawaiians at one time.
Oh, wow.
100,000 Hawaiians in Waikiki. You cannot imagine that today. Like, it's so complicated to imagine that. So it's those kind of things. I mean, we have the Alawai Canal today, as mentioned, as you're mentioning the clip. I did a video, and it's just trying to find, the Hawaii State Archives here in Hawaii is a great source of old pictures and photographs, and they continue to upload throughout the days and times. So I'm always constantly looking to see what they may have uploaded. And I came across these old pictures of actually people fishing in the Alawai. And today, the Alawai, if you don't know, is just a canal that is so dirty, and it stinks, and it's getting better. It's improving, but it actually was created to take away those streams. Some people say that the Alawai was created because they wanted to take away the streams and dry up Waikiki so it can become a tourist destination and people can make money. But the more prominent story you hear is that because of the still water that was throughout Waikiki, it became much more unsanitary, because over time we had Chinese immigrants moving into Waikiki. They converted those fish ponds, which traditionally fish ponds were great because it never captured water. It flowed. Water would enter, water would exit. But then when the Chinese came in, they converted those to rice paddies. The water then just stayed and sat. So then you have a lot more mosquitoes. You have ducks and feces, and it became a lot more unsanitary. So then in the 1920s, the health department dredged the Alawai to help to alleviate that unhealthy conditions. But from that point, it was just, Waikiki just seemed to divert much more to tourists. And my recent interview I actually had was around Waikiki, speaking with old kupuna, or our elders who grew up and are from Waikiki. And they're telling their stories of how it used to be nothing, as mentioned, nothing taller than a coconut tree. They all had gravel roads, the Beach Boys and the fun music and musicians. One point, Hawaiian music would be coming out of every corner of Waikiki. Now you hardly hear Hawaiian music. Now those same kupuna are saying they never come into Waikiki because it's not oriented for local people anymore. It's all geared to tourists. So that's how you can see the love-hate relationship. The one thing I would love to tell people, though, is as you come down here, it's those stories we want you to hear. It's those stories that we want you to capture. What you see today is just business. That's outsiders coming into Hawaii, using our culture to turn around and sell and make money off of other people. How then can we start to reclaim our land? Because Hawaiians aren't part of that conversation. I mean, not that I know of. And we're over here, a lot of times you go through Waikiki, you see homeless people who are on drugs and unfortunate lives on the sidewalk. And a lot of those are unfortunately local Hawaiian people. Yet at the same time, you're having these rich hoity-toity people coming and spending their vacation. Again, their vacation is our day of trying to survive. It's a complete contrast. So I would just like to bring that contrast into people's attention. What you and the decisions you make from that point, that's on you. But at least I'm trying to provide to you the more authentic experience and what we want you to know, while at the same time trying to reclaim our voice and reclaim our power, because this is our home and we have kuleana to it.
Say someone's listening and they have a trip booked and they happen to be staying in Waikiki, say this summer, for example. What would you want them to know? But I think maybe more importantly, once there on Oahu and in Waikiki, how would you want them to go about their trip or their experiences?
Thank you for asking that, because I think that's one thing we would like to share as Hawaiians. One thing is enjoy. We're not angry in the fact that don't come here, and you stay away. That's not my perspective, at least. Come and enjoy, because again, our essence of being Hawaiian is we're here to share this with you. But at that same time, there's more to Hawaiian culture and Hawaii, to the extent that than what is just in your face. Aside from checking out Waikiki, and of course, people have their more tourist things they want to do, I would just highly encourage people, if you're going to come down here, enjoy yourself, but find ways to learn about the culture and the history and the people, and take a step further. And how can you give back? I mean, as Hawaiian, I think all of us here are always finding ways to give back to the land. We call it olelo no iao, or a wise saying or a proverb. And it's something to the effect of, he ali'i ka aina te kanaka ke kaua, I think. And it means that the land is the chief, the people are its servant. So in Hawaiian mentality, there wasn't not just a chief and everybody works towards the chief or the king and he calls the shots. The main idea was the chief's responsibility is to make sure that the land is being cared for. So Hawaiians, we're always trying to find a way to give back to the land. Don't necessarily always see that with visitors. And I think that would be a great opportunity for a visitor to have the more authentic Hawaii experience. Go into a lo'i, go into a taro patch, go in, get your feet dirty, get your hands into the mud, because that is what being Hawaiian is being one with the land. As mentioned, Kalo is revered as our older brother. To that extent, that's how much we try to care for our land. If there's specific places I would recommend to go, Iolani Palace is a must go. Iolani Palace is in Honolulu, but it's a capture of time of one portion of our monarchy, which is the latter portion of our monarchy. I mean, but there's so many other palaces as well. Here on Oahu, there's Queen Emma Summer Palace, but other places there are Kualoa Ranch, which a lot of people will be familiar with that because a lot of movies were filmed there, just such as Jurassic Park and 50 First Dates and many others. But it's from a Hawaiian family, and they continue to keep that organization and that company within their family, but open it up to the world. So it's one of those more authentic experiences by Hawaiians providing this experience. Waimea Valley is another one, and that's all the way up in the North Shore. But when you go in there, you literally are stepping into a valley that is set up in the way that it once was. And you're walking around, you're hearing these stories. Those are the experience that I think we want. Start there. have conversations, build relationships, and see where those will go. But if you're trying to have your first time here, those are the main places, especially Iolani Palace, I would say check out.
That's beautiful. Now, this might be a lofty question or just maybe a dream question, but I like to dream a little bit. Where Waikiki is now today in 2025, how would you see, not the trajectory that Waikiki is going currently, but if there could be like a change of course, how would you see a future for Waikiki?
My honest question is, have Waikiki back in our hands, and just as beautiful as the pictures as I seen it in the old days. Honestly, that's what I would love to see. Knowing that's pretty unrealistic, at least in the near future. One thing is just the presence of Hawaiians. For example, through my show and the interviews I've been having, especially with the kupuna, who were musicians in Waikiki, as mentioned before, there used to be music coming out of every corner of Waikiki. Some of these aunties that are used to singing Waikiki, they would say they would come from one place doing their show. On the break, they'll go across the street to the next house or the next club or the bar, go inside, sing over there, jump to the next one, and they would do that. And it was just strolling down. You have that essence. Now, Hawaiian music and Hawaiian musicians are getting booted because they cost too much. So they're going to bring in a foreigner or somebody else who does super cheap music that's not Hawaiian and not authentic. And then they're going to advertise it as Hawaiian music. That's not okay at all. It's not okay. I mean, it's little things like that. Hawaiian, somebody who dances in Hawaii, in Waikiki, you have shows. There's not enough shows. And again, the shows, in my perspective, are used as fluff. Well, what about, how do you take that next step? Because these are the things that Hawaiians are doing. Hawaiians are the musicians. Hawaiians are the dancers. Hawaiians are the guys on the beach teaching the surf lessons. Hawaiians aren't necessarily the ones that are in the corporate office, are the big bosses of these hotels. That's not us. I mean, I would like to say that there are people, which I do know that there are, but there's far and few between compared to outsiders coming here and controlling it. Because the older I'm getting and the more people I speak with, I'm realizing, as easy as it is to say that money talks, money truly, truly talks. And Hawaiians don't got money compared to the rest of the world. So if you look at it as a losing battle, you're going to lose. But in my mind, I'm always thinking there has to be a way. There has to be a way. So for me, I'm just trying to do a little thing by little by little. And so for my videos, my personal goal, and this is just me, and I think it's a big thing eventually. Others could see it such as a small, minute thing. But I would like to do a video on every street in Waikiki. Because with every street comes a street name. So if I can, and that's what I do, is I take the street name and I build a 1-2 minute story about what that street name speaks of. Well, it's those little things. And then there comes the consistency. I mean, you can go on and do a little story share with people one day and the next day just not do it anymore. I'm realizing though, like the consistent effort that you put into something, that is where traction will start to build. I think for Hawaiians, it's our responsibility individually to make that happen. I always say God is going to be only as true to you as you want him to be. And bringing that back home, Waikiki and its future is only going to be as real as you want it to be. If you're going to allow somebody else and you're going to give them the effort to do it, you can't grumble to how it's going to turn out. But if you're putting your hands, you're giving your effort, you're doing your due diligence and your kuleana, your responsibility and your privilege to do this, that's where I think you can help to mold what the future looks like. But again, it's kind of going back to aloha. What is sharing too much? What is sharing too little? And where is that pono balance in between?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like as simple as having Hawaiians and sharing their music. We were recently in Waikiki at a restaurant and, guys playing John Mayer and, all the top 40 hits or whatever. And yeah, it sounds good. But I was watching a live stream of a native Hawaiian. He was, it's a stream in a set. He was asking for requests over the feed. I think I requested like a Brother Is song, like Kleohano or something like that. And he played it. And it was just like, there was just something about him singing it and just it just felt alive. And it's hard to put your finger on it. But you feel that compared to like, nothing against John Mayer, but you feel that, compared to like a John Mayer song, it's like, okay.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
I've never thought about that. I resonate with that. Yeah.
You can go anywhere in the world and listen to John Mayer, but you come to Hawaii to take the Hawaii experience. And, when we talk about people, I know kupuna who showed up to work one day at a hotel, and as they showed up, they were told, this is your last day. Like, you're fired on that day. I mean, where is the aloha in that? That's just not cool at all. I mean, why? Because they brought in a cheaper musician to play non-Hawaiian music. But these people, I would just like to make note that these people who spend their time to play music, they charge a lot because that's their product, just as much as another person who's doing whatever is their product and they sell it. And there's no problem with that. Musicians, and again, in Hawaii, music, chants, dance, that is our means of keeping our stories alive. So to somebody else, it could just be, they're just singing. Yeah, but that's a vital essence to who we are. And if they're charging their price, it's because our cost of living in Hawaii is extravagant. Why? Because of outsiders moving here and upping the price for us. And then it bumps us out. I think just the latest report I seen come out, one out of 3 Hawaiian families are looking to move out as of right now because it's too expensive. So that's an issue that only kind of has its fingers within our community across the islands. So that's why people are so passionate about it. And when they just cut you off for somebody cheaper, it's not just getting fired. It's like you're disrespecting so much more to me. That's kind of how I look at it.
It's interesting you say that. I mean, where I live, I'm friends with this family from Laie. They opened up a Hawaiian plate lunch, which is great. We had them on the podcast, and yeah, it is interesting in my conversation with them. Like, there are these little communities, especially on the West Coast, of Native Hawaiians. Obviously, the ninth island being Las Vegas is huge, but even in the little community that I'm in, there's a good little pocket of a lot of people from the North Shore that had to move out. This is probably a bigger conversation, but a lot of people who visit Hawaii, and I was one of them the first time I visited. I'm like, oh man, what can I do to like move here? And I just want to live here. And I think it's an innocent question, but how would you respond to somebody who has visited from the continental US? I just want to move there. I just want to live there. I just feel this pull to live there. How would you respond to that person?
On the inside of me, because I always say too that, there's the angry Hawaiian. For me, the angry Hawaiian still remains on the inside. But I think over time, I realized and I found ways of how to express that anger because of everything we've learned through our history and use it in a positive way. And for me, my videos and my stories is my means of trying to express that. On the inside, we all kind of have a conversation between Hawaiians like, no, don't move here. Because we're over here trying to fix our land. We're trying to, reclaim our land, because we lost it. So we put that aside. Think about what my professional opinion would be. And my answer, I would say go back to the word kuleana. Kuleana, if you look in the Hawaiian dictionary, very easy. If you ask somebody, it's responsibility, which is true. It's responsibility. But in Tutu Mary Kavena Pukui's dictionary, it's interesting because I came across, I think it's the second definition, but before responsibility is stated, privilege comes first. So kuleana is not just responsibility, but it's also your privilege. For me, if anybody wants to move here, I would say, what is your kuleana to Hawaii then? What is your responsibility to this land? Because I remember, as we were talking, Hawaiians say, Heli'i ka'aina he kanaka ke kaua, is the land. We are just here to serve the land, because when the land is ripe and the land is providing, we are being able to live. And we take this time to live to give back. So then there's this cycle. When you move here without that cycle in mind, then you're already going against what Hawaiians are thinking. And that momentum continues to build, which is why Hawaiians are being pushed away and pushed out of our own home. For those who are interested, my question to you is, what then would your responsibility be to this land? Because we're here to provide for it, to make sure that this land will continue to thrive, and its stories and its resources for our keiki and their next generations. If we were to damage all our streams, take away all our water to build, at some point, we're not going to have water. So it's that kind of mentality. When we build the lo'ikalo, as mentioned, the water comes through. The water moved through from in and out. It never stayed stagnant. That came when foreigners came in, and that's what then led to unsanitary conditions. Are you going to come here and move here to create a rice paddy to just keep water to yourself and keep it stagnant, where eventually it's going to turn into an unhealthy situation? So are you here just to think for yourself and just to live now? Or are you going to be here to build a lo'ikalo, to build something that water will move through you and you can find your own space here to contribute back to the land? What is your kuleana? Because if you're here just to build your own little space and be selfish with it, you're going to have a much harder time with the Hawaiian community. But if you're here to be a part of our community and try to make all of our lives thrive and keep us balanced, then you're going to have a much easier time here. So it's your mindset. Some people come here and they never mesh. I've seen a video of some Holly guy arguing with a Hawaiian on the beach of Waikiki. Actually, I don't know what they're arguing about. I have instances where people start to come to me and raise their voice and have a little more of a different tone because what I'm sharing, they don't like it. But what I'm sharing is my knowledge, is our home, is how we live. We have a unique way of living here in Hawaii that you won't find anyplace else. And so I guess as a Hawaiian, I would just ask you, if you're going to move here, find your space that you can help to give back to the land as well.
Yeah, well said. And that makes a lot of sense. Kamaka, anything else about Waikiki specifically, maybe that we didn't cover or that you would like people to know?
Waikiki is a beautiful place. As you mentioned, it's the mecca of tourism, I think, not just for Hawaii, but the entire Pacific. So it definitely brings the world here. But before the world came here, Waikiki was one of the main spots for many Hawaiian royalty. So I read a story once. This one story shares that the first native Hawaiians who migrated here, they're on the water, they're on the ocean, and they chose to come to Oahu because Oahu looked to be the most lush. And as they arrived, story shares that they arrived, which is now the home of Bellows Air Force Base in Waimanalo. The traditional name of that place is Hunananiho. Well, the story shares that they arrived on those shores. They settled between Waimanalo and its two neighboring ahupua'a or towns today, Kailua and then Kaneohe. So from Waimanalo, Kailua, Kaneohe is known to be, at least to this one story, the first settlement of all Hawaiians and all Hawaii, because this story shared that the land was so lush between the ecology, the water, so much fish and the marine life and pristine resources. From there, they said they moved, they got into the canoe, they paddled around the point. The second settlement of all Hawaiians across all Hawaii is believed to be in Waikiki, because Waikiki's environment was the closest to this side of the island, Waimanalo, Kailua, Kaneohe. That within itself, to me, is wow, like chicken skin just now. If Waikiki is the second settlement of all Hawaiians in the entire history, shouldn't we be treating it a little bit more special and with a little bit more reverence than just continuing to build cement buildings? To me, that builds sanctity, and that's one thing. But then over time, Waikiki, a lot of Hawaiian chiefs, royalty once lived in Waikiki because that's how awesome it was. It was even the capital of the kingdom at one point. So King Kamehameha the Great, the first, was the gentleman who created the Hawaiian kingdom, and he formed the Hawaiian kingdom in 1810 was when it finally was officially formed. But throughout his conquest, wherever he traveled, the capital of his kingdom traveled with him. So Kamehameha moved and lived in Waikiki. So Waikiki became the capital of the Hawaiian kingdom at one point. And it was Kamehameha. We think of kings and rulers around the world. Oh, you tell your servants and all your people to, you go do this while I'm going to go and just bask and have the ladies fan me with leaves and everything. Well, you guys do that. Well, Kamehameha was such a gentleman, and it's our Hawaiian mindset. He was inside those lo'ikalo and planting those taro patches in Waikiki just alongside people. Because again, you needed to be able to survive. You care for the land so you can survive there. That's just another layer of sanctity. Like, that's not just a home for our li'i. It was the capital of our kingdom. It's so easy to forget all these stories because let's build another hotel. Let's make some more money. Let's have this. Let's do that. Let's take a time, though, to take a break from the craziness and the fastness of today's world and learn a little bit about the history. Because as they say, if you don't learn your history, you're bound to repeat the mistakes that you once did. So I would just like to bring that attention that Waikiki is much more than what you think is.
Hmm. I have a couple more questions, a little bit lighter. What's your favorite place to eat on Oahu? So someone coming to visit, or maybe you don't want to release that one spot, but
we gave fake answers to those questions. Nah.
I know.
I mean, if you're coming to Hawaii, you have to try Hawaiian food. So if I'm going to give out any Hawaiian food places, I mean, we have Highway Inn. There's one place in Honolulu close to Waikiki. Highway Inn is a good place. Helen's is another good place. Like good, fun local stuff to eat, though, that I like. Malasadas, which is a Portuguese donut kind of a thing. Leonard's and right off of Kapahulu once you're coming out of Waikiki. Malasada is a good thing. But number one food for me is poi. And for those who don't know poi, which is really funny because tourists either like it or hate it. And sometimes they're like, ugh, and people can get offended, but I think it's more hilarious that you don't like it because more for me. But poi is our kalo, our staple crop, and we just mash it up with water and you make it into a pasty thing. We are raised on poi as like baby food, and then that keeps us connected with our older brother, with our land, and it's just super delicious. But to me, poi is awesome, and a lot of other people don't like it, which is cool. More for me.
Also, on the show, we talk a lot about local businesses. What are some local businesses that visitors can support when visiting Oahu?
Oh, there's so much. I would just highly encourage, if you're coming to Oahu, number one thing is try to find local businesses first, because it's so easy to go to. I mean, Waikiki, you're going to find an ABC store on every single corner, which is a convenience store from Japan. Try to find the local shops first. But local businesses, I mean, clothing, we have a lot of artists and they have a lot of beautiful attire. This is Lex Breezy is the name of this brand.
We had her on the podcast. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful shirt. This lei is... This was actually made from my kumu, my teacher in hula, but these are sandalwood, or iliahi, we call it. And it's just little things like this that people spend their life making stuff like this, because it's one way that we can find, how do we modernize our culture, put stories and designs from our culture onto more modern things. And that's how we can get it across. So, I mean, if you're looking to buy clothes, don't go down Waikiki on Kalakaua Avenue to Dior or Hermes or all those fancy stores that people come to Hawaii to go shop for, which you can find every place else. Come to Hawaii to go buy Hawaii stuff. There's so much. Manuhea Li'i is another. Sig Zane is another. Manola is another brand. Smaller brands, I mean, you have Kealopiko, you have Pomahina Designs, you have so much. I'm going to have comments coming to me. You didn't mention my brand, friend. Can't think that fast on the top of my head.
Well, also, I mean, if you are in Waikiki, there's House of Mana Up is maybe a good spot to kind of get.
I believe they're at the Royal Hawaiian Center, if I'm not mistaken.
Second floor.
Because it's a co-op, so it's a bunch of different local artists that fill that shop up. That's a good one, yeah.
Similar to, local market, farmer markets too. Are there any that you would recommend?
Oh, yes. We have a bunch of farmers markets. Our biggest one is called our swap meet, which it's held at our Aloha Stadium, which I know they're going to be moving because they're going to be redoing a new stadium. That's the main kind of a big swap meet and a farmer's market. But within a lot of, I mean, even malls and shopping centers in Waikiki, I know at the Hyatt Hotel, they used to do it. I'm not too sure they still do it. But even within hotels, they'll have farmers markets. So farmers would come down, artists would come down, and they'll fill it out with their local produce or their products. And that's one thing that I know hotels are doing, an effort that they're doing to try to bring back more locals into Waikiki. That's just one step. We know, let's do more. When you see a market like that, I highly encourage you to, if you see something you like, buy it, because a lot of those people are here living in Hawaii trying to make their ends meet.
Kamaka, thank you so much for your time. And I know we mentioned a lot about some of the projects you're working on with your interviews and your videos. How can people find you, connect with you, and follow along?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me. I greatly appreciate this time and opportunity. Social media, Aloha Authentic on Instagram or Facebook, or if you go to alohaauthentic.org is my website. And I just try to use that as pretty much put everything. So from my interviews, the long version interviews, my short street segments, and all other videos, they're all on there I would like to just point out that becomes a public resource. All the videos that I make, my goal that it becomes available online for people to hopefully learn about our history in more of a modern way. Teachers like to use it in schools and classrooms. So Aloha Authentic, the goal is to become just an additional resource for our Lahui, our Native Hawaiian community, but for the rest of the world to learn about Hawaii the way we want them to know.
I just had this vision, 100 years from now, people are going back in the archives of Kamaka and just seeing videos and stuff.
You're going to forget
cool.
my face.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, right on. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Right on. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Mahalo. Mahalo. And that wraps up our look at the hidden Waikiki. For me, probably one of the most interesting facts is that the freshwater springs that gave Waikiki its name are now under concrete. But what gives me hope is people like Kamaka bringing these stories to life and telling these stories via social media and the platforms like alohaauthentic.org. What surprised me probably the most in my conversation was learning that Waikiki was the second Hawaiian settlement in history and served as the capital under King Kamehameha, who worked right alongside of his people in the taro patches. So I hope that this episode maybe gave you a little bit more insight into Waikiki. And next time you're there, remember you're walking on land where Hawaiian royalty lived, which is pretty wild, and a place with much deeper history than what appears on the surface. And until next time, as always, live with aloha. Mahalo for listening to this episode of Hawaii's Best. To stay up to date on future episodes, hit follow on your podcast app. Hawaii's Best is a production of Shorebreak Media Group with editing by Easy Podcast Solutions and music courtesy of our friends Stick Figure. We are currently running a giveaway until March 23rd at midnight Hawaii time. For a chance to win a $75 Visa gift card, simply go to the link in our episode description by scrolling down or go to hawaiisbesttravel.com/survey. Thanks again and good luck. Mahalo for your support.